Hi, it's October the 13th, 2022. October the 13th, 1917 was the miracle of the sun, and I'm going to read something of it from this book today. It's an old book. But it's the 155th anniversary of that day, but a lot of people don't know about it. So that's why I decided to do a video on this. It's an old book that I found in my wife's ancestral home. This account of it is pretty interesting because it had a lot of, it created a certain kind of a personal, you could say, consternation amongst the people of this writer's acquaintance. And it prompted him to one day defend himself, and he stood by his word. So let's take a look. All right. It's titled The Miracle of the Sun. Let's begin. The lady had disappeared as usual in the midst of the ecstasy of the little seers and the silence of the crowd. Suddenly, Lucia shouted. So this is Sister Lucia. She's one of the seers of the Fatima visions. Look at the sun. That enormous crowd of pilgrims, such as perhaps had never been seen in any part of our country, that's Portugal, looked at the sun without any difficulty and saw the great miracle which the Virgin had promised, so that you may believe. Many newspapers of the time published accounts of the phenomenon. Many impartial people reported scientists like Professor Dr. Jose Maria de Proença de Almeida Garret, Emeritus Professor of the University of Coimbra, distinguished priests who until then had been very reserved, etc. Out of all the reports, we want to pick out the one published by O Século, written by their special correspondent, the brilliant journalist Avelino de Almeida, very attached to Freemasonry. For this very reason, we choose part of his report. And so it begins, right? So I'm going to quote his report. And so we are present at a unique spectacle, unbelievable to those who did not witness it. From the summit of the road where the cars were gathered and hundreds of people were brave enough to get onto the clayey earth, you could see the immense crowd turning towards the sun, which is free of clouds at the zenith. The sun is like a dull silver black, and it is possible to gaze at the disk without any effort. It does not burn, does not blind. It seems like an eclipse. But a great shout arises, and you can hear the nearest spectators shouting, "Miracle! Miracle! Wonder! Wonder!" Before the dazzled eyes of those people whose attitude takes us back to biblical times and pale with wonder, with heads uncovered, gaze at the sky. The sun trembled, the sun made sudden movements outside all cosmic laws, the sun danced according to the typical expression of the country people. Perched on the platform of the bus from Torres Navas, a very old man whose figure and face, at once sweet and vigorous, remind us of Paul Deronlede, facing the sun, recites in a loud voice the creed. I ask who it is, and am told that it is Mr. João Maria Amado de Melo Ramalho da Cunha Vasconcelos. I see him afterwards going towards those who surround him and who still have their hats on their heads, and earnestly begging them to remove them in the presence of such an extraordinary demonstration of the existence of God. Similar scenes are repeated elsewhere, and a woman bathed in tears, almost choking, calls out, "What a shame! There are still men who do not take off their hats in the presence of such a wonderful miracle." Then people ask each other what they have seen. The majority say they saw the trembling and dancing of the sun. Others say they saw the smiling face of the Virgin herself, swear that the sun whirled around like they saw, like a Catherine wheel, that it came down almost low enough to burn the earth with its rays. Some say it changed color. It is to be noted that the journalist does not give his personal opinion. He concentrated on looking around and describing the reactions of the crowd. Perhaps he did not want to commit himself, attached as he was to Masonic circles. But even so, these did not forgive him. So that his report ended with "some say it changed color." I'm sorry, I didn't say that. But even so, they did not forgive him. They hoped that he would demolish all that myth and the superstition of the Cova de Iria. So they insulted him and abused him so that he would retract what he had written. It was then that Avelino de Almeida came out into the open with a notable personal report which crushed his friends, who had suddenly become enemies simply because the journalist had not played the game, although he hid part of the truth. Here is the unvarnished account of Avelino de Almeida, addressed to a friend and companion of his youth. So here I begin his response. Breaking a silence of more than 20 years and invoking the distant and nostalgic times in which we lived as companions, In the same faith and fortified by identical aims, you write and ask me to tell you sincerely and in detail what I saw and heard in the arid land of Fatima, when the fame of the heavenly apparition drew to that desolate place tens of thousands of people more desirous, according to what I believe, of the supernatural than impelled by mere curiosity or hoping for gain. Catholics are in disagreement about the importance and meaning of what they saw. Some were convinced that promises from above had been fulfilled. Others are still far from believing in the undoubted reality of a miracle. You were a believer in your youth and then ceased to be one. Members of your family dragged you to Fatima in the immense crowd of people who collected there on October 13th. Your rationalism received a severe blow and you wanted to have a sound opinion. Making use of trustworthy reports such as mine, since I was only there carrying out a difficult mission, which was to report impartially for the great daily newspaper, O Seculo, the facts which I observed, and everything strange and explanatory which happened. I will not delay in satisfying your wish, but certainly our eyes and ears did not see or hear different things, and very few remained insensitive to the grandeur of such a spectacle, which was unique and from every point of view worthy of meditation and study. What did I hear? And what took me to Fatima? The Virgin Mary, after the feast of the Ascension, appeared to three children who were grazing their animals, two girls and one boy, recommending them to pray and promising to appear there above an ilex tree on the 13th of each month, and that in October she would give them some sign of the power of God and make revelations. The news spread for many miles around. It ran from village to village all over Portugal, and the pilgrimage of the faithful increased from month to month, so that there collected in the arid land of Fatima on October 13th about 50,000 people, according to the calculations of reliable people. At the previous gatherings of the faithful, there were those who thought they had seen strange astronomical and atmospheric occurrences, which they took to be a sign of direct divine intervention. People spoke of sudden lowerings of temperature, of the scintillation of stars at midday, and of beautiful clouds which had never been seen before around the sun. People repeated with feeling that the lady recommended penance and that she wanted a chapel built at that place, that on 13th October she would show the infinite goodness and omnipotence of God by means of a proof which all could appreciate. So, on the famous and long-awaited day, there came to Fatima from far and near, in spite of all the difficulties and hardships of the journey, thousands and thousands of people, some who trudged miles in the sun and rain, others who came in every kind of vehicle from almost prehistoric to the most recent and wonderful cars, and many, many who braved the discomfort of third class on the trains, in which to travel relatively short distances today took many hours and then days and nights. I saw groups of men and women traveling patiently, as if in a dream, the day before towards the famous place, singing hymns and walking barefoot in time with them, and the rhythmic recitation of the rosary, undaunted by the sudden changes of weather, when the heavy showers of rain turned the dusty roads into mud, and the gentleness of autumn followed for a day the harsh rigors of winter. I saw the crowd now press round the little tree of the miracle, plucking its branches to keep as relics, now spread over the vast moor which the road to Lera crosses and dominates, and which was encumbered by the most picturesque and heterogeneous collection of cars and people on that memorable day, waiting in an orderly way for the supernatural manifestations without fearing that the wintry weather would spoil them by diminishing their splendor and power. I saw that discouragement did not enter the souls, that trust remained strong in spite of unexpected setbacks. The composure of the crowd, in which peasants predominated, was perfect, and the children whom they considered privileged received demonstrations of intense affection from that crowd, which knelt, took off their hats, and prayed according to their command, as the hour of the miracle drew near, the hour of the visible sign, the mystic and long-awaited hour of the covenant between heaven and earth. And when I thought I would not see anything more impressive than the noisy but peaceful crowd, all animated by the same strong desire, what did I see in the moor of Fatima which was really strange? At the predetermined hour, the rain stopped. The dense mass of clouds broke asunder, and the sun of dull silver at its zenith seemed to start a wild dance, which many people thought was a rainbow dance. Such beautiful and bright colors successively covered the face of the sun. Miracle, as the people shouted, natural phenomenon, as the scholars say, I don't know now, but only tell you what I saw. The rest concerns science and the church. It must not be thought that the forces of the event ended with the last apparition. No, they continued for a long time, but they only served the Portuguese of good faith to become more sincere, that they should form a new perception for the joy of God and the good of us all, which remains today perhaps more enlightened. From then until now, Fatima has really been an oasis for souls who are tormented or seeking divine grace. Pilgrims from all over the world go there constantly to praise the Lord through His Most Holy Mother, she who 50 years ago appeared to the little shepherds to entrust them to give everybody a message of penance and love for His Immaculate Heart and for the Sacred Heart of Mary. So that's where it ended. The rest concerns science and the church is where his letter ends. Pretty impressive, right? But it's also in a way sad that we must trust the testimony of the Freemasons. We must be forced to rely on that above all else, because people have become so skeptical that they turn and say, well, if an enemy of the church says it, it must be true. Well, if the church says it, it must be true, and it ought, because it's the church is the pillar and ground of the truth. So that's the miracle of Fatima. Eyewitness account, very reliable, of course, because he has put his reputation on the line. And let us pray to Our Lady of Fatima today, because the way to peace, which she was coming to announce, the way to peace is through penance. So we all have work to do. Penance and then peace. See you tomorrow.